Greetings, welcome, soyez les bienvenus. Thank you for joining us tonight for this Green Party of Canada Flash Virtual Town Hall, coming to you from the riding of Toronto Centre. I'm Andrew Craig, your host and moderator for this 1-hour online event. Tonight's discussion features leaders. The leader of the Green Party of Ontario and the MPP for the riding of Guelph, Mike Schreiner. The former leader of the Green Party of Canada, Elizabeth May, and the newly minted leader of the Green Party of Canada, Annamie Paul. Before we go any further, let us acknowledge and honor the ancestral guardians of this land and its waterways. For thousands of years, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, the Ojibwe Chippewa, and Mississaugas of the Credit took care of the land on which we stand right now. These were their traditional hunting and fishing grounds, and they lived in concert with the land, taking only what was needed. The process of ceding these lands culminated in the year 1805, the year of the Toronto Purchase. As recently as 2010, after years of dispute, the Mississaugas won the largest claim settlement in Canadian history. Many more territories, however, remain in dispute or unceded across this land. We all have a great responsibility to know and understand the history of the land on which we live, gather, and prosper. I encourage us all to do the same. I know it will be no secret that First Nations people have not always been well treated by the settlers and their descendants, and yet they still offer their traditional knowledge and wisdom to us. And for this, we give thanks. Today, many Indigenous peoples continue to call this land home and act as its stewards, and this responsibility extends to us and to all peoples to share and care for this land for many generations to come. I'm Andrew Craig, your host. Again, the format of tonight's town hall will be a little bit different from what you may have seen in the past. After each of the leaders has the opportunity to address you individually, we'll begin with a prepared question and then proceed into questions that come from both participants here in Toronto Centre and across the country. After that question has been answered, the leaders will have the opportunity to further discuss or embellish upon the topic. Please keep in mind the total length for this event is 1 hour, so there will be undoubtedly many questions we cannot field today. That said, all of your questions are captured and will be fielded by the Green Party of Canada, hopefully in the future. And we'll end by talking about how you can become involved with the Green Party, and if you're a Toronto Centre resident, how you can help catapult Annamie to victory, the first step in bringing real positive change to this riding. I would now like to welcome Mike Schreiner to speak.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. And you are part of a history-making event. On the one hand, we have one inspiring leader and a dear friend of mine, Elizabeth May, who has worked so hard to provide a solid foundation for the Green Movement and the Green Party of Canada. And on the other hand, you have another inspiring leader who Elizabeth is passing the torch to, my friend Annamie Paul, who is going to build an amazing house on that foundation. A diverse, inclusive, accessible, energy efficient green house. And it starts right here in Toronto Centre. And you all have an opportunity to ensure that Annamie can get off to an amazing start in this historic by-election. And so during the course of the evening tonight, I'm going to ask each and every one of you to go to annamiepaul.ca/donate. And you'll be able to find that link in the chat box. So over the course of the night, we need you to make a donation to Annamie's campaign, this historic campaign to ensure that our new leader gets off to the start we need, and we ensure the first brick in this new house is built right here in Toronto Centre. And for only, there you go, and for the maximum amount you can donate is $1,650. And that is only going to cost you $975. And I want to be, that's with your tax credits and everything. And I want to be very clear that if you donate $1,000 to this campaign, it's actually going to cost you less than $500. It's only going to cost you $442 when you get your tax credit back. And I know not everyone has that amount of money, so I just want to make two more points. One is the sweet spot is around $300 donation, because that only costs you $75 once you receive your tax credit. And I also want to point out that for a $50 donation, it only costs you $12.50. So I'm hoping over the course of the night, you'll be inspired by the two leaders you have in front of you, and you donate to Annamie Paul's campaign, because we're going to elect her as the next MP for Toronto Centre.
Thank you so much, Mike Schreiner, once again, the leader of the Green Party of Ontario and the MPP for the riding of Guelph. I would now like to offer the platform to, and I don't want to call you former anymore. I think I'm going to make a unilateral decision to call you Leader Emerita.
But I'm still a parliamentary leader. So
yes,
you can use that.
yes, okay. So
Yeah.
Parliamentary Leader, Elizabeth May.
Thanks, Andrew. And Mike, that was just lovely. So I also want to do a shout out, since I know we're reaching people across Canada, that two other inspiring women leaders are running right now. Naomi Hunter is the leader of the Green Party of Saskatchewan. They have a provincial election. And Sonia Furstenau, leader of the Green Party of British Columbia, in a very hard-fought campaign brought on by John Horgan. And I will say no more about John Horgan because I want to stay positive. So I will say that there are opportunities for every single person watching tonight to help Annamie Paul win in Toronto Centre. Besides the donations that Mike has covered so clearly, there's also phoning into the riding. And if you live anywhere in the GTA, I'm sure there's ways, even in COVID, like standing on a corner with, we're 6 foot distance. We were doing this earlier today in Toronto Centre. Drivers look and say, wow, Annamie Paul. Volunteers are out on the street for Annamie Paul. I promise you, there are no volunteers out on the street for any of the other candidates in this riding, in a by-election that was called quickly. No need to call the by-election now, in a hot spot of COVID, in a place where people have real needs, real fears. A by-election is not what they needed. What they do need is good representation. So they need Annamie Paul to be their member of parliament. I'm so committed to that. It will be the game changer for Greens across the country. So please don't hesitate. Do whatever you can, and don't listen to people who say it's a Liberal stronghold. When I ran in Saanich Gulf Islands, it was called a Conservative stronghold. So bear that in mind, and just know that the more people who turn out to vote, the more the predictable wisdom turns out to be wrong.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And now, since we've been talking about her, I think it's absolutely appropriate that she be given the appropriate platform. Please welcome with me the newly minted leader of the Green Party of Canada, Annamie Paul.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Elizabeth and Mike, for your comments. I'm just so excited to be joining you and working towards just a better, brighter future, and working to build Greens in Ontario. Given that we're with you, Mike, I want to say what I said all throughout the campaign, that this is the next powerhouse base for the Green Party in Canada. And we also want to make sure that we do everything we can to support you in the build-up to the next election, because I really see breakthroughs for us, especially as people in Canada are seeing how, and in Ontario are seeing how important our policies would have been had they been in place when this pandemic hit. And in terms of Toronto Centre, I actually, as I was listening to Elizabeth, I was just sort of, once again, the feelings were bubbling up. They're bubbling up because this is a riding that I have a great connection to, deep roots in. I was born in the old Toronto Centre before the boundaries changed. My mother taught in the schools here. This is where she started her teaching career. My grandmother was a frontline worker in the hospitals. So when you think about the work that they do, and this is where she spent her entire working life. And so this is a place that means a lot to me. And it makes me so frustrated to see the Liberal Party once again neglecting this riding. They did not need to call this by-election. This is a hot spot, a hot zone for the COVID infection. And it is a hot zone exactly because it has been neglected. We have overcrowding because there is no affordable housing in this area. And so we're very little. And so we have people living in very compressed circumstances. And so, of course, COVID has spread like wildfire throughout the Moss Park neighborhood and the St. Jamestown neighborhood. And so these are people that should be taking care of themselves. These are people that should be staying home in order to prevent infection. And what do they get? They get their Liberal government and their representation, their supposed representation, deciding that this is the moment for a by-election. And so I am just outraged about that. I am so annoyed that instead of focusing on the really urgent needs of people in this riding, the opioid epidemic, affordable housing, 40% of children in this riding still live in poverty. The crime rates, all of these things have gotten worse during the Trudeau government. Instead of focusing on those and how to bring this pandemic under control, they have decided to cynically call a by-election. And so I am saying no on behalf of people in Toronto Centre. I am saying that they deserve real representation. I am saying that anyone, all of you who are watching, wherever you are in the country, wherever you are in Ontario, even if you're not a Green, if you feel that this is wrong, if you feel that it is time that your neighbors in Toronto Centre get the representation that is going to help them deal with these urgent needs, that you come and help, that you volunteer your time. You can do it from wherever you are in the country, and that we use this opportunity not only to send a message to the Liberals, but also to bring relief, because we know that when Greens are elected, that first they stay elected because they care about their communities and they prioritize their communities. And also we put people at the center of everything that we do, and we really fight for our constituents. So I think that's it for me. I'm ready to go. I'm hoping that until the latest hour, I'm hoping that the Prime Minister reconsiders this very ill-judged decision of his, very ill-considered and opportunistic decision of his. But if he doesn't, we're ready to go. We're ready to go, and we're going to do all that we can to win with your help.
Thank you so much, Annamie Paul. And of course, we'll look at this, as unfortunate as it is, as an opportunity for the Green Party to make a sizable and meaningful difference right here in Toronto Centre. We'll start with a question, and I'll put the question to you first, but of course, Elizabeth and Mike on the call, please feel free to amplify the response. And that question is this: what do you feel makes the Green Party a viable alternative for those who don't feel they have a home with the traditional parties?
Well, this moment has changed everything. And I would say also electing me has changed a lot as well. When the Green Party members in their wisdom decided to elect someone who had never been elected before from a group who has been historically underrepresented in politics, they were saying that diverse representation matters. And we were saying at that moment, for everyone who has felt unrepresented, who has not seen themselves reflected, who has not heard their voice echoed back to them by the people in power, that they have a home with us, and that we have an intention, and really an intention to make sure that those people find their place. And so they're very welcome. And I and our campaign and our party have always said that this is something that we are going to prioritize. So I'm so proud of our members. I'm so proud of our members for once again leading the way, once again showing how things should be so that we can ultimately get there. So for those who feel, again, for those people, I say that this is a brand new day. Believe it is possible, because it is possible. What wasn't possible 4 days ago is now possible. And together again, in terms of Toronto Centre, we can also take that lesson to heart. It's been 27 years of Liberals in power here, but that doesn't mean it always has to be that way. All it takes is that courage, that one daring step to take us into the future that we want to head in. And so I hope all of those people take a lot of hope and heart, and I hope that, I haven't checked the numbers, Elizabeth, but I'm hoping that we have even more members today than we did yesterday and the day before, because those people have finally found a place.
Yeah. So your question was viable. To be viable means to be livable. So none of the other parties offer anything livable. They don't offer sustainable livelihoods. They don't offer guaranteed livable income. But more fundamentally, none of the other federal political parties have policies and positions that ensure that we'll be here in generations to look back at this history-making moment. We have in the Liberal speech from the throne, which we actually met, we'll share with folks that
Yep.
we actually met for the first time, Jenica Atwin, MP for Fredericton, Paul Manley, MP for Nanaimo Ladysmith, and me for Saturday Gulf Islands, with our new leader, Annamie Paul, and said, how do we all feel about the speech from the throne? You know, because if we work to consensus, so if we're going to vote, it's, you know, we don't always vote the same way, but it's good if we reach a consensus position. And we all said, no, we don't want, no. And Annie said, no, I don't think so. But the main reason not to vote for the speech from the throne for me was I'd met with the Prime Minister the week before. I've met with the Deputy Prime Minister, with the Minister of Environment. I said, look, our bottom line has to be, because we're running out of time, this is about science, not politics. And if we don't have a target for 2030 that allows us to avoid going above 1.5 degrees Celsius into a zone where human civilization could collapse within the lifetime of our children. So how do we know that the Green Party is a viable alternative? It's the only viable alternative.
Mm-hmm. And following on the heels of your comments around making sure that this is a sustainable, livable place for our future generations, this question comes from Spencer, who is the youngest Green Party member in Canada.
Oh, we had to pass a special motion in council so that he could join, because you can join at 14, and I think, is it Spencer Lipa? I think he was 10
I
at the
believe,
time.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's amazing. Okay, sorry.
Here's his question. You are running in a by-election right now, and we do not know how soon we'll have a general election. What are the Green Party's plans for how to campaign in a pandemic?
That is something we have written the book on. This is good news. We are planning to, I want to make sure that I have time and the other candidates who ran have time, because we have learned just about everything that there is to know about running in a pandemic. It's not something anyone wants to do, but it's something that we have learned how to do really well. We have learned how to reach people virtually. We've learned how to do digital outreach. We've learned what kind of things attract people to online spaces. So we are ready to deploy all of that knowledge on behalf of all Green Party candidates across the country. And it's actually a competitive advantage for us. We're the only the only leadership, it's not even a leadership race anymore. We're the only party that has a body of knowledge about how to do that successfully. And so, that's something that we should absolutely be using. And not to worry, Spencer, we've got it. We've got this one for you. If the election is called tomorrow, we know how to do it. Let's hope that we don't have an election tomorrow again. I'm tired,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, of these opportunistic elections that are being called. I said during my speech on Saturday that we have to know what a life is worth. And could anyone live with themselves if there's just one person anywhere in BC or in Ontario that either didn't get to vote because they're in quarantine or because they're ill because of the pandemic, or who didn't get to vote or went to vote and then got sick or spread it throughout their community? So if we have to do it, we've got you. We've got this.
Yes.
But we hope that we don't have to go there anytime soon.
I just want to add, I find it really distressing. The first politician to cynically turn a minority government into a majority was, of course, in New Brunswick. And Premier Higgs decided he didn't like being in a minority, he didn't like having to work with the 3 Green MLAs there. But New Brunswick has a very low COVID rate.
Yep.
So the second one to be cynical and opportunistic was, of course, John Horgan, who broke a fixed election date law and broke a working agreement, which would have seen the people of British Columbia get better service right now in a pandemic. So he could, again, all he cares about is power for himself. And it's so selfish and dangerous. But the thing is, British Columbia has a COVID rate 6 times higher than New Brunswick.
Yep.
Now, what we're looking at here in Toronto Centre and York Centre is the federal government today, Parliament today, received advice from the Chief Electoral Officer. Elections Canada has been studying this. They note that the Elections Act, as it now applies, requires a number of workers and a number of dates and a number of confined spaces. And Elections Canada has worked up amendments to the Elections Act so that we could have, if we had to have a pandemic, an election, a national election in a pandemic, with these changes to the Elections Act, we can do it safely. We could have passed these changes to the Elections Act before by-elections in York Centre and Toronto Centre were called. There was no legal requirement to call these by-elections before changing the Elections Act to ensure safe working conditions for Elections Canada staff, for the neighborhoods here in Toronto Centre and York Centre. So that to me, I feel your anger bubbling up about that, Annamie, and I feel it too, because then the next one, by the way, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe also called an election in a pandemic because they see a chance, because basically a lot of voters feel as though if their government's been taking care of them in this pandemic, they like their government.
That's right.
But in British Columbia, it's not Dr. Bonnie Henry running for premier. And here, I mean, it's not a referendum on Dr. Theresa Tam. It's about who should be the best representative for this riding.
Right. Yeah.
And it's you, obviously, but.
Absolutely. Anyways, we're going to channel that frustration. We're going to channel it, and we're going to win this election more than anything, because as I said, I really believe that people around the province will not abandon their neighbors. And I do, we can see already the volunteers that have been just pouring in from the Green Party and beyond, wanting to help us in this campaign. And I think the Liberals have underestimated how frustrated and upset people will be, even their traditional base, in being called into an election during this period. And this is a riding that is in there was an alarm that was going off when we were out earlier. And it just reminded me, this is a 3-alarm fire in this riding that the Liberals just refuse to put out. And so someone has to come and do that. And I am offering that strong green option.
It feels like there's a question that falls on the heels of what you've just said, and I'm posing it to both of you effectively. What is the green response to what we could call political opportunism? Is this really what this is? How would you characterize it that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is exactly what it is. It's when you call an election during a pandemic with about a month to campaign, knowing that one of the parties is in the midst of a leadership race, knowing again that the traditional things that parties need to do in order to organize just simply are not possible. Then absolutely, it is an opportunistic move. And this is a moment where we would have wanted to see true leadership by avoiding those opportunistic moves and really focusing on cooperation, where we have, even in a minority situation, if you have a working partnership, then use it. We have had very good cooperation across parties at the national level, and so why interfere with that? This was absolutely not necessary, but it does provide us with the opportunity again to give people in Toronto Centre yet another chance, which I believe they deserve, to take that leap and get the representation they deserve. Many people don't seem to think it can get any better, but it's not true. This does not need to be a community in a permanent decline. We can actually tackle the opioid epidemic. We can do it. It's just a question, again, of selecting the right representation to make that happen. And it's clearly not the Liberal Party. They have had 27 years to prove differently. It's not them.
Let's pivot to a question that comes from one of the 800 plus participants on this virtual town hall.
Oh,
Hello out there.
I love that.
So this question comes from Graham Newby, and he says, Annamie, so excited to have you as a candidate and the new leader of the Green Party. Can you please tell us if there's a story behind your polar bear necklace?
Oh, yes. Oh, and just, it had never occurred to me before, but I do feel that I need to say this is not bone, okay? It is not fur. It is no precious metal. It is simply ceramic. It just really spoke to me. I don't know if this is my spirit animal or what, but it's just something that really spoke to me when I saw it. It just feels, when I'm feeling particularly green, I like to wear it, and I've had it for a number of years. It's Spanish, in fact. It's by a Spanish artist, an independent Spanish artist, who just, I guess, knew me. It's one of a kind. I'm terrified of dropping it, because it's fragile.
Should you tell people what you were doing in Spain, since you were doing cool international work?
I was. The last thing that I did before leaving Europe was to found an innovation hub. I founded an innovation hub that helps to catalyze the work of international NGOs working on the greatest challenges, because, again, I was always destined to be a green. Always, I can tell. because I believe in the possibility of positive change through collective action. And I believe in amplifying the work and the activity of others towards that. And so that's what we did. And the very last thing I did was to help to launch, and I sat on the board and launched and incubated a climate infrastructure project. And I can tell you, I don't have to tell you at all, but I can tell the viewers that when you've sat in the room with the experts, the world, the leading experts on the climate emergency, and heard from them how urgent the situation is, and how little time we have left, you cannot help but want to dedicate your life to it. And it was a big reason that I came back to Canada wanting to join a party. And as Elizabeth said, I did my homework. And after you look at all of the parties, if you understand the urgency, there is only one choice. There is only one choice, and that's the Green Party. We are the only ones with targets and a plan that are sufficient to the science. So I feel at home, me and my bear. If our viewers have a name that they'd like to suggest for the bear,
Now that's a fantastic election initiative.
That's
to
right.
To put out to the folks across the country.
That's right.
We'll set this up on the website, annamiepaul.ca.
That's right.
You can
Name the bear.
You can name the bear
Name the
contest.
bear.
Well, I took off my own necklace because I didn't want to bump against my microphone, but I'm so glad that that we've actually now got some context to that. It's becoming very much your symbol. We will again pivot to another question that comes from our now 945 plus people.
Okay, let's get to 1,000.
I like it.
Yeah.
And this question comes to you in French, so I'll read it to you, and then if you'd like, you can translate or I can translate. Adam Sommerfeld demande: Bonsoir Annamie, félicitations. Comment comptez-vous faire du Parti vert une option politique sérieuse et légitime au Québec, une région où les gens ont clairement affiché leurs préoccupations face à la crise climatique et écologique dans les sondages et dans les rues?
J'adore votre accent.
Oh, merci. Je l'ai appris
Excellent.
ici à Toronto.
Ok, excellent. Les mères sont françaises ou?
Non, pas française. Hein?
Juste comme ça?
Oui, comme ça.
Wow, ok. Merci pour la question, Adam. Et oui, pour moi, je veux absolument faire augmenter nos membres au Québec. Une des choses que j'ai dû laisser tomber pendant la pandémie, c'était de passer beaucoup de temps au Québec. Vous êtes absolument correct que les Québécois et Québécoises sont très, très, très progressistes. C'était là au Québec où on avait vu 500 000 personnes sortir dans les rues pour manifester et réclamer l'action pour combattre la crise climatique. Alors, pour moi, c'est très évident que la maison, chez nous, des Québécois et Québécoises sur le plan fédéral devrait être le Parti vert. Alors, c'est à nous de communiquer, de faire les contacts vers ces personnes très progressistes et de leur donner toutes les raisons de joignez-nous, de voter pour nous, de nous représenter comme candidates et candidates dans les élections. Et oui, je crois que en ce moment, il y a donc la terre est très fertile et que c'est le bon moment à le faire. C'est notre travail aussi d'assurer que nous sommes complètement bilingues dans tous nos relations publiques parce que, oui, c'est très important. Moi, c'est personnel, mes enfants font partie de la francophonie. Alors, je tiens vraiment au cœur la langue française. C'est une marque de respect de le parler. Et je remercie ma mère pour toutes les années dans l'immersion française. Mais oui, je sais que les Québec sont ouverts à notre message. Il faut juste que nous prenions quelques pas vers eux pour ce qu'ils peuvent prendre quelques pas vers nous.
So Adam asked, what do you think, Annamie, we can do to reach out as the Green Party to the people of Quebec? They're very concerned about the environment. We need to make I won't go through everything of his. And then Annamie's answer was, of course, that Quebec is really progressive. We have to get our message out to Quebecers. It's really important how beautifully bilingual she is, and the party as a whole needs to communicate in both official languages all the time at every level. And of course, Annamie recalls, and I was there that day when in Montreal there were 500,000 people marching. Yeah. And I always thought my favorite thing out of that day, by the way, was the Beaverton afterwards, because Justin Trudeau was marching and he met with Greta Thunberg, and the Beaverton headline was, Justin Trudeau pledges to Greta Thunberg that he will name his next pipeline after her in her honor.
My favorite thing is the image of the two of them.
Yeah.
With Justin Trudeau sitting there and Greta Thunberg just not looking pleased at all. But
not having any of it.
I'm not having it. That was
not
the look. That was it, just through the eyes.
It's so clear that we can make a huge breakthrough in Quebec.
Yep. We really can. We really can. And we're ready.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Would love to proceed to the next question, which comes from Jen Trotman. She says, good evening. My husband and I are in Toronto Centre. We are very excited about your success so far and the possibilities for this riding. You have our attention, but we are not clear on your specific plans for this area. What are you able to do for us that the Liberal MPs haven't? And if I might just amplify that, the larger question I believe that's included in that is, how can a federal MP have real local impact?
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for the question. And I would say, to be honest, that's a very low bar. Because if the question is what can we do that the Liberal MPs have not been able to do, it's basically just anything. Pick a topic, yeah. And we must be able to do better than that. First let me address the macro thing, which is the provincial federal split. I reject categorically, and I believe people in Canada have rejected this notion that anything that is essential for their well-being can be stymied because of this issue of jurisdiction. Whether we're talking about long-term care or tackling the opioid epidemic or affordable housing or education, these are fundamental rights, and we have to approach them that way. And so when we talk about Toronto Centre, I'll give you an encouraging story just to give you an example of what we should expect all the time here. The provincial government wanted to close the safe injection sites. They that was one of the Ford promises and plans, very aligned with his politics. And the government bypassed it. The federal government bypassed that and extended funding to them. They did the same thing with legal aid clinics, providing services to new Canadians and immigrants and refugees. That also was the purview of the provincial government. So where there is a will, there is a way. And if you're talking about urgent needs, then that's what we have to demand from all the levels of government. And we've seen that during the pandemic, where the federal government has been in all kinds of areas that are normally provincial. So in terms of what we would do, what I would do, it would be to identify every lever at the disposal of the federal government on behalf of people in this riding to get them the urgent services that they need. And I would not stop because it is traditionally provincial jurisdiction. And where possible, you work with your provincial counterparts. And where that becomes impossible, you find a way to meet those needs in any case. So we're very cooperative, we're very collaborative, but we will never, as a party, let one single person fall through the cracks because we claimed jurisdiction. And I say that as a lawyer and someone, before someone asks, yes, I have read the Constitution. Okay, so it's coming, Elizabeth. I know it is. No. I have read the Constitution, and so I say that all this, knowing that.
Can I throw one more thing in here, if I can? I think for a lot of voters, because I certainly ran into this when I was first elected in Saanich Gulf Islands in 2011. So picture this: I'm trying to convince voters to vote for me to be their MP, knowing that if I win, I am absolutely for sure going to be there by myself. Yeah. So the question is, and afterwards the media all said, well, we'll never hear from her again because one MP can't do anything. guess what? One MP can move mountains, especially if you're not in one of the big parties where you're just another bum in the seat who's told what to do. So that's what you'll get if you get a Liberal MP here. You'll get someone who's told what to do. Their focus will not be on Toronto Centre. I can promise you, I did things as an MP in Saanich Gulf Islands. I brought money into the riding. I got projects into the riding. I worked with other parties. Paul Manley's gotten housing projects into his riding. We pay attention to the opportunities. And if you in Toronto Centre have a federal party leader, especially someone as passionate and articulate as Annamie Paul, on the floor of the House of Commons raising your issues and your concerns, you will see movement on the ground here.
Absolutely. That's it. That's exactly it. It is better. I said that in the last election. It is better to have one Green MP in your corner than to have the Minister of Finance in that case, because one is going to be waking up every day, fighting for the community, identifying every single opportunity for programs and services and funding for the community. The other person is going to be wherever they are, doing whatever they are for everyone but that community.
It does beg the question if the previous representative for this riding was the federal minister of finance, arguably one of the most powerful portfolios one can have in politics, and didn't make a sizable contribution to the neighborhood and to the community. How much more powerful does it get? How much more can be expected?
It doesn't, and it's scandalous. It's scandalous that someone who literally controlled the purse strings was not able to help the community in the 5 years that he represented this community. Every single statistic got worse. Whether you're talking about crime, affordability, transportation, housing, child poverty, poverty in general, every single one of those got worse during the 2015 to 2019 Trudeau years. And so I would just say exactly that. It's an excellent point. If the Minister of Finance cannot deliver on behalf of this community, then no one can, and they're just not interested. And so this is a much better opportunity. And certainly, even though I'm the leader of the party, my duty, and Greens feel this very strongly, is always to the people that elected us. Our first loyalty is not to the party. Okay, it's not to our, it's not to our national image, in my case as the leader. It is to finding all the ways to help the people that elected me.
Let's pivot to the next question, which comes from Isabella Genk. She asks, what would you do for Ontario Disability Support Program and Ontario Works recipients here in Toronto Centre?
Well, those, see, now I'm going to contradict myself. I mean, those are provincial programs, but what I can say, and particularly in this moment of pandemic, is that what I have wanted to see, and we haven't seen yet, are an extension of benefits that recognizes the particular needs that disabled people are facing in this time. There are all kinds of expenses associated with the pandemic and not any corresponding increase in benefits. And so, yes, there were some encouraging words about that in the speech from the throne, but I do know that the one-time payment is one that people with disabilities are still waiting for. I do know that it's not nearly enough. What I would, again, like to see more and more, and this is not a new thing, we are talking about the way that we built our most cherished programs. It's the provincial governments and the federal government sitting down in a spirit of can-do cooperation on behalf of people and saying, how can we work together to craft national approaches that cover everyone, that of course give flexibility to provinces, to adjust and modify, but make sure that there is a baseline. There is a baseline that everyone has and everyone is covered. And so those days are not behind us as far as I'm concerned, and it's the kind of thing that I want, that we have to push for if we're going to. And I will say also that, of course, a guaranteed livable income certainly would help, right? And I'm going to pass it to you for that.
Yeah. Well, again,
over to you.
Yeah, and also thinking that if Mike Schreiner's still with us, but the ability to work with provincial Green counterparts in their legislature with the federal Greens working together. So Annamie Paul, as your MP, is going to be able to make the linkages that occur because we're willing to be cooperative. I mean, I could tell, I don't want to take too much time, so I'm not going to tell the war stories of how much stuff we were able to shift during pandemic. Just a caucus of 3 MPs.
Yeah.
I know we made a bigger difference as a caucus than the other ones. Well, because the other ones also, if a party's goals are how do I make the other guys look bad?
Exactly.
If I get them to do the thing that looks good, they might look good. But it doesn't matter if your policies are going to make another party look good. If they do the right thing and get things moving for people who need help, like people living with disabilities, then that's great. Steal our programs, steal our ideas, but actually do them.
Yep.
So guaranteed livable income is a longer answer. So I'm gonna move to the next question because I don't want to keep talking when I know we have questions for Annamie.
No, but that's
You asked if Mike Schreiner was still here. And
Yes,
we
I
kept
don't
him.
want to talk very long because you're here to hear Annamie, but I can just make a commitment to everyone that this is provincial jurisdiction, but I will work hand in hand with Annamie to push the Ford government to at the very least top up Ontario Work and Ontario Disability Support payments to the CERB level. We've determined that $2,000 a month is what somebody needs, and it's criminal in this province that people in Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support payments, their monthly payments are far below that. That's something Annamie and I will work on together.
absolutely.
We'll proceed to the next question, which is in French. I'm going to ask forgiveness of this person because their name is a little hard to decipher. Unblind or Unblind Tibin demande quelle est votre stratégie pour convertir des voteurs NPD et libéral qui disent toujours qu'ils doivent voter pour ces partis stratégiquement pour barrer la route aux conservateurs?
Oui. Bon, d'abord, en ce moment, à Toronto Centre, dans notre élection, ce n'est pas nécessaire parce qu'il n'y a pas de raison de voter stratégiquement. On sait que le gouvernement minoritaire du Parti libéral va survivre, même s'il y a un député de moins dans le Parti libéral. Alors, c'est une raison de moins de ne pas voter pour aller vers dans cette élection. Mais en général, oui, c'est absolument vrai. À peu près un tiers des Canadiens ont avoué de décider de voter stratégiquement au dernier moment dans les élections de 2019. Alors, ils ont décidé de voter contre quelque chose et pas pour quelque chose. Alors, nous, comme Vert, notre rôle, notre défi, c'est de leur donner toutes les raisons de voter pour quelque chose, de prendre ce dernier pas vers nous et vers des politiques qui vont vraiment faire une différence dans leur vie par voter pour nous. Moi, je crois que la pandémie, qui est tellement tragique, qui a transformé notre société, que la pandémie a ouvert la porte à les personnes de voter pour nous. Les libéraux désaffectés, les conservateurs, tous les gens au Canada qui disent ça suffit. Ça suffit avec un système, un cercle éternel de voter pour les conservateurs, les libéraux, en espérant des différents résultats. Si on veut des différents résultats, il faut faire des différents choix. Et dans la plupart du monde, quand les Verts font leur grand pas en avance, quand ils font leur breakthrough, c'est dans les moments comme ça, comme les moments comme lequel on a subi en ce moment. Alors, j'ai beaucoup d'espoir pour les prochaines élections.
So quickly, what the questioner in French was asking about, what do you do to convince people who've been told for years you have to vote strategically, you have to vote liberal, you have to vote NDP because you have to stop the Conservatives. And Annamie pointed out quite well, this does not apply to a by-election, and especially in this riding. But nothing changes in Ottawa after this election. It's not as if suddenly Stephen Harper can get in. It's a by-election. This is essentially, for people in Toronto Centre, this is your free trial of Annamie Paul as your member of Parliament. You get a free opportunity. You can put her out there, see how it goes, and then you can decide whether you want your money back in the next election. No, I mean, I'm beginning to think, she slices, she dices, she chops.
Buy now.
Call now. The thing to say is the devil of strategic voting is only because we have this perverse first past the post voting system,
Yep,
which most
absolutely.
democracies do not use. And I think it's very important to get to the need for proportional representation. And I'm really happy with Annamie Paul's positions on that. We are on the same page.
Yep.
We need citizens' assemblies. We have to move forward.
We weren't supposed to be here anymore, according to this particular government. We weren't supposed to be in the situation anymore.
That's right.
That's what they said.
That's right.
No, Justin Trudeau said, I think it's over 1,800 times, 2015 will be the last election under first past the post. And yeah.
And
Yes. But we will keep that flame alive. You know, that is our role. And this year of all years has really demonstrated why it is critical to have a party that does that. Because there were many things that I was told, and I'm sure you were told during debates in the last election, that were fantastical. It was just magical thinking on our part, right? Slogans, they said. And yet here we are. And yesterday I was interviewed by The Guardian in Britain, and they said, the journalist said, reading your platform and looking at this moment in Canada, it occurs to me that Greens are sort of like oracles. You know, how does it feel to have been so prophetic about what was needed and what the policy should be? And I said, you know, brother, it's hard work sometimes, but someone has to do it.
Yeah.
Someone has got to be the party putting it out there first, being the daring party, building the political discourse until the moment that everyone is talking about it. So that is us.
So perhaps we have, this is an opportunity for a pop culture reference. Maybe this is a Matrix moment, and you are the oracle,
my
and you're saying
goodness.
to Justin Trudeau, take a cookie. You'll
We
feel
are
better."
bonded for life. We are bonded for life because as soon as you give a Matrix influence, reference, you've had me. Yes, take the cookie.
Take a cookie,
Yeah.
you'll feel better.
That's right. See, that's like, we won't get too deep into it, but just to say yes, I mean, this can feel a bit like a deja vu sometimes, but it really is our job. If it is not us, then there is no one.
Well, you've been saying this through the campaign. I mean, we were the first party to call for same-sex marriage legalization. We were the first party to call for cannabis legalization. When we put those ideas forward, there were people just scoffed.
Absolutely.
We were the first party to call for guaranteed livable income, and now it's the top choice of the Liberal caucus, if not the Prime Minister. We were the first party to call for, real climate action, for pharmacare. This is what we do. Is we go first. Because we're brave and we're calling for what's needed instead of what's popular. And then when we're not mown down and left in a heap, the others say, oh, that kind of got popular, that idea the Greens had, let's go take it.
Yep. And they're welcome to it. But again, there still needs to be that ideas factory. We are the innovation factory. And I've said several times in the last few days of interviews that the other parties, unfortunately, just seem to be intellectually exhausted. The well has run dry, and they have become so enamored with just winning and what is going to get them to win, and the focus groups and the surveys, that they just don't have the ideas or the courage, when they do have the ideas, to put them out there. That's where we come in. And I say, why take the copy when you can take the original? And so that is the case that we're going to be making here in Toronto Centre and across Canada.
Thank you for those answers. And while I have this moment, I'm going to say a very large thank you to all of the hardworking volunteers who are making calls to the voters here in Toronto Centre right now. Hundreds and hundreds of calls they're making. We need your help of putting out a call again. You can join up. You can help us make those phone calls. You can sign up at www.annamiepaul.ca volunteer. And just to be clear, if you put in annamiepaul.ca, you might get a redirect or it might not work. Make sure you put in www.annamiepaul.ca/volunteer. And the links again are in this chat. One last question from Elaine Ng. She shares, thank you, Elizabeth. You are the leader to motivate others to do the best by your actions. We are, as a family in Vancouver, BC, often we read what is going on with the Green Party and go to many events there. As a visible minority working woman, I hope Annamie will speak about your achievements and your journeys as a visible minority woman in Canada, the challenges and injustices that you experience, because many of us are supporting you to represent us. Thank you again from Elaine Ng and family.
So
It's
nice.
just wonderful. I will continue to raise my voice, and it's a tricky thing being a woman of color, because when you talk about being a woman of color and how it impacts your experience, you are accused of playing identity politics. And not even a woman of color, I mean a woman also. If you talk about what it's like being a woman in politics, it's identity politics. But then you can't escape your identity, in terms of politics. And so it's just, you can't win. But I will talk about it because there is no question that it is more difficult. It's more difficult for women to run. This is, again, we are the evidence-based party. I spent a lot of time when I finished my graduate studies, founding the first institute that, work studying this, advancing knowledge, advocating and training just on this issue. And so the evidence tells us that it is much more difficult. Not because, and it's interesting, not because we are less electable. Women are actually more electable than men, and everyone should know that.
So true.
More electable. A voter is more likely to vote for a woman than for a man. And people of color are just as electable if they're in an electable riding. So the key is getting into those ridings. But running for leadership, being in a leadership position, I am going to take your advice, Elizabeth, which is do not read your social media. Just do not read it. My son has confiscated my phone. That is just over.
Yeah.
Because there is still a lot of toxic culture in
horrible.
politics. A lot of good people are going to be completely turned off by politics. And I couldn't honestly say that it's for the faint of heart. No. You really have to have a great support network. You really have to have a great, centeredness, a real sense of self, because it is a blood sport. It's just brutal.
And also because there are policy prescriptions that must be brought into this because it is vile. That things that are published against. I receive it every day on Twitter. Some of them are very close to death threats, but Twitter doesn't know anything about you. And there's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of cruelty. And what I would say is, it's important, I think, to participate. I actually look at everything to know, is this a real life voter who's got a real life question? But we should be regulating the Facebooks and the Twitters as publishers. They get away with murder because they're regulated by this fiction that they're platforms and somehow neutral and not responsible for things like letting militia groups in the U.S. have Facebook pages. Hello, there's things you need to do to say, if a newspaper requires, before publishing a letter to the editor, to know where you really live, who you really are, and have your phone number, then we should make sure we know the ISP addresses and are able to know, yes, the Twitter, the Facebook, all of these platforms are not platforms, they're publishers. And what they've also done is erode the health of our own local newspapers and other ways of communicating. So in a democracy, there's prescriptions that we have to follow for this. And I believe, obviously, I get quite emotional about it, how important it is that we not let this be a wild, wild west where these guys who make their profits in other countries erode our own local newspapers, and particularly for women, and I know particularly for women of color and Indigenous women, subject people to vile daily abuse. It shouldn't be allowed. I would say one thing, though, because you mentioned a moment ago about the other parties being exhausted, intellectually exhausted. I just want to mention this woman here. She has done, I think, 30 interviews a day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Now, it's when, so indomitable. Monday, she's still, speaking not just coherently, but brilliantly. So and she's got 2 more things to do tonight.
I'm speaking about Kamala Harris, speaking about women who are breaking barriers. Kamala Harris is debating tonight, and I've been asked to comment on that. But I will say that we also need a certain amount of self-regulation. I absolutely agree with that. But maybe I will end on that thought. Let's bring some more kindness back into politics. Let's remember that there are actually good people for good reasons that decide to put themselves forward to serve their communities in this way. And let's make sure that we make space for those people. Otherwise, we will only get what we expect, which are people that are so egotistical and could care less about any of that, so self-centered that they're the only ones that survive this brutal, brutal process. So let's bring some more kindness and goodwill back into to politics. And thank you very much for saying that. I absolutely am aware that we have a platform to bring these issues to the attention of people. I'm also aware that we lose out every time a good person decides not to run, particularly now when we need all of these great new, bold ideas, and those come from everywhere. So I will speak out, and I know Elizabeth will definitely speak out. So you can count on us.
I am taken by a statistic that I saw earlier this year that listed that the top 7 countries that were doing best in managing the pandemic were women-led.
They were what?
They were led by women.
I feel sorry, one more time.
I do
They were
believe
what?
that they were led by women.
There we go.
And the converse is also true.
And also, they're in countries that are elect those women leaders
Yep.
through proportional
PR.
representation. Every single one of them.
Yep. I feel there's a theme.
There's a bit of a theme. There's a theme emerging. We have only a few minutes left. Speaking of good people in office, I'd love to give Mike Schreiner an opportunity to fold back into this conversation.
Yes.
Mike, any comments that you would like to offer?
Yeah, I just want to say earlier tonight, somebody asked, what can one MP do? And I can tell you, I've been able, as the only Green MPP at Queen's Park, with a Doug Ford government, I've been able to get things for my riding. And as a matter of fact, I've even been able to pass a private member's bill with the Conservatives to benefit electric vehicles. So imagine, after hearing how brilliant Annamie Paul is, what she is going to do for Toronto Centre. One MP, well, she'll have a whole caucus of Green MPs,
right.
so it's not even one in her case. And so I hope you're all inspired tonight. I really, really want to encourage Greens from across the country to volunteer, to donate, and get involved in this campaign, because we can make history together.
Yeah. Twice in 1 month.
Twice in 1 month we can make history. Time is short, but I would like to field one additional question that comes from people who are on the call, and this has to do with the nature of leadership elections. Vince Fiorito asks, leadership races can be divisive. What is your plan to unite the Green Party?
Well, I've already started talking to all of the candidates. I mean, we are Greens, and the thing that I always kept in my mind's eye during this race, and I'm sure many of them did as well, is that we have these core values that we share, that we all believe that our members are the source of our ideas, our inspiration, our policies. And so having that base, having that common foundation, I always remembered that, as much as we all wanted to win, as much as we all, had thrown so much into it, and as much as we had policy differences, that was something we always shared together. And so I've spoken with, more than half of the candidates now. I'm going to speak to the rest of them. And I was really grateful for how quickly they did what I would have done, which is to reach out and say, congratulations, we're going to work together. Let's make sure we support the new leader. I'm going to, I am the leader of their party too. And I've said this, I will say this until my throat runs dry, which might be very soon, but people don't recognize what good, healthy democracy looks like anymore, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And we don't, because the other parties have just abandoned the field. They have elections, and the second that they're over, there's a purge, and the staff is out, and my team is in, and it's all very top down. And if anyone speaks with an independent voice after that, then they're not loyal to the caucus. And as we saw with Jody and Jane Philpott, they get kicked out. That is not our way. The reason that we are so bold in our policy, that we have the best policies time after time after time, is because we give space for all of these different views, all of these different opinions. We have the cut, the thrust, all of that. That tension is good. And then we come together, usually by consensus, and that is where these extraordinary ideas come from. And so, again, if we're not doing that, then there's no one, because we're the only party of the major parties that's working that way. So, yes, the uniting has begun. It will continue. I hope that many of the candidates choose to run again, that many of them will serve in our shadow cabinet. We are a united party, and we're all better because of the extraordinary talent that we had in our leadership race. And look, it was 8 rounds, right? So it wasn't like it was a shoo-in for me. So I'm very aware of that too, and I'm fully open to the ideas and contributions of all of the people that supported other candidates.
That's a beautiful moment to bring cadence to our conversation. I will reach out again to all those who have taken part in this call with 2 very important points to remember. The first one is www.annamiepaul.ca/volunteer. The other one is www.annamiepaul.ca/donate. The two ways that you can make extraordinary, lasting change, make this victory in Toronto Centre possible, is through your efforts. You can make a difference. We can make a difference together. And I'm certainly hoping that after tonight's conversation, you feel more confident about that. I want to thank Mike Schreiner, MPP for Guelph and the leader of the Green Party of Ontario, our Professor Emerita, our Leader Emerita, Elizabeth May, and Parliamentary Leader Elizabeth May, and of course Annamie Paul, our new Federal Leader of the Green Party, for tonight's lively and informative discussion. I want to thank each and every one of you for staying with us and being part of this discussion, being a part of real and lasting change for our communities, our nation, and our planet. From here in Toronto Centre, good night and be well. Stay safe.